So I know a lot of us are not going out. A lot of us are stuck at home. But if you did go out today, you would have noticed that things are getting bad. I saw easily 20 infected people today alone. People just standing on the side of the road looking into space and then bursting into action like dogs chasing cars. Their bodies all on the side of the road from where people have hit the sick people and abandoned vehicles in the medians from where they were damaged out. It's obviously surreal. And seriously, outside the station in the parking lot, and there's a group of them, and I doubt you could visit any civic center right now and not be completely on your toes. If it's not impossible at all just to walk around. And walking the strips, even with closed stores, it's like walking in a minefield. And there are people that are doing this, and some of the stores have been looted, but it's a little more horrifying to realize a lot of places haven't been looted. And someone asked me why, because it's pretty simple. Getting into any location at this point is like trying to walk into a loaded gun. You just don't know what you're going to get. These stores, especially home-owned small businesses, they're literally havens for the infected. You could be walking into some of the worst areas in the world just by going into one of these smaller businesses. I don't know if that's true of any of the bigger marketed stores, but for the smaller stuff, I mean, obviously things have been locked up. People have been inside. Some of them have been using these places for sort of refuges from the problems that are happening right now. And there's no telling if they could have been locked inside with somebody who was already sick, or let somebody in to help them out, and the results are negative. So I see a lot of people who they are holed up, but are completely unwilling to help others, as you can open a door for somebody and let them in, and you end up helping the people that will eventually come after you or leading others to you. So it's an interesting area of making decisions now of what we have to think about. The other thing I constantly hear now is gunfire. It's coming from somewhere, almost seems like everywhere. And that used to be something that we never heard. You just never heard any of that stuff. And that was perfect. That was just one now. What are they shooting at? Not sure, but I'm pretty sure I could guess. I'm hoping that that's not associated with some sort of looting or other problem, but it could be. This is the thing. I'm just going to help you with this. If you're involved in some of this stuff, you need to be careful. If you're going out, you need to be careful. Obviously, a lot of people are tending to be armed. I tend to think that there's better ways of dealing with this problem. But if you do have to confront someone, hopefully the people that you're running into is normal people. I hope that we can all kind of understand that we have a unified enemy here. I don't know if I should call them an enemy, but in other words, someone who is out to get you or protect yourself from them. We have a unified thing there, so I'm hoping that people work together. I don't know if that's always happened, and I pretty much know it hasn't. But if you do come together and you do see somebody that's infected, and they are attacking you and you must defend yourself, I am hearing now that shooting in the head is the best direction to go, and otherwise you are wasting ammo. But obviously the best course of action is to not put yourself in situations right now where things are a problem. So I think what I'm hearing right now, what I'm hoping is National Guard or somebody like that, police force or something that is going out and sort of, I'm going to use the word dealing with the problem. And that's the thing is you got to leave this to the professionals. I understand that, but still, there's concerns about people that are out there right now who are in situations, and there's somebody that's going to save them. And we have to be honest, the results are not always what we want.
This is a message from Civil Defense Authority. You are currently under quarantine conditions. Do not leave your house for any reason unless you are authorized an essential worker. If you or anyone you know has been bitten or injured by an infected individual, you are to report to your nearest shelter for treatment immediately. Anyone harboring the infected will be prosecuted. These instructions will repeat. This is a message from Civil Defense Authority. You are currently under quarantine conditions. Do not leave your house for any reason unless you are authorized an essential worker. If you or anyone you know has been bitten or injured by an infected individual, you are to report to your nearest shelter for treatment immediately. Anyone harboring the infected will be prosecuted. These instructions will repeat.
So, we're also being told by politicians and scientists that what we're dealing with is just an illness. And I'm just going to say I'm not a conspiracy guy, but it's starting to say it's hard to say we aren't dealing with basically dead people getting up and walking around. People get injured, they get bitten, and suddenly they have no movement, and then suddenly the same condition that everybody else has. There is a certain step of things that happened. I've seen some of the videos out there. A lot of the stuff has been removed, thankfully, because it's always graphic. There's nothing that isn't graphic. But once you see it, it really has a presence of being, that's a given kind of thing. Maybe that's me. I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. I don't think anyone other than those living completely in the sticks are seeing something or know someone that hasn't been infected. So everybody that I've run into has run into somebody who is actually part of this or knows somebody directly that has been affected by this. And that's something that's serious. I think we do need to all come together on that front and help each other out and give the appropriate support. I know while people are locked up and they're trying to wait this out, you may not even feel what's going on out there is real. But for those in certain areas, it is all too real. It's almost like we're seeing some sort of hysteria sinking in from people checking out, I'm going to use that word, I guess the word euphemistically, to doing drastic things to survive. This coin has an insane level of sides and contrasts. One story I heard of people that had cooked dogs and cats for food, stuff that we can't confirm obviously, and some with little oversight from police or entire police forces becoming infected or quitting the police force in general. Some areas gangs have just completely taken over. They're going from house to house, in something a sort of protection racket, forcing people to pay protection money to be involved in this situation where they're going to basically protect them, I guess. There was one slum we heard that they didn't even take money anymore. They wanted food, they wanted supplies in return for dealing with the infected, was the wording that we saw. And I think we're going to see more and more of this insanity, especially in big cities. So the biggest concern obviously is somebody makes a threat that they want protection money and then says, look, if you don't pay up, we remove your door, or we remove your ability to protect yourself, or, you know, even worse, that they bring an infected person in to put people in harm's way. And that's a serious thing that people need to be aware of. And that's what I was talking about before, about being able to align with each other and help each other out. I do hope that people do help each other and protect each other, but some of these things can get very scammy. They can get very taking advantage of people. So, and yeah, this is something I heard about today, and it seems to be gaining traction, but it's just something on a whole new level of crazy. But it's not well known. In some of these Appalachian areas and in Canada, we have what can be best described as, I'm going to use the word zombie worshippers. They feel that this symbolizes the end of the world, and they want to embrace it entirely. They take in members, they go through some initiation, and then some of them are even getting bitten or put into situations where they are infected, like they're taking on some sort of representation of the religion, and they turn into those things, and then they're being worshipped by these followers, or somehow making it to this next level makes it so that you can get this new level. I don't understand fully, and even the details aren't clear, but it's something about basically this transition or ascension into an immortal body was how I was reading. I think it's something that's written in Revelations, but hey, like like this is their future form or something like that. And a lot of them use words like the end of times, like God's coming back, and it changes everyone or transitions them, or I don't know the wording of it, but that's how they're saying it is. And I don't even know how do you embrace that. But this is what happens when people get into these situations and you get pressurized and you lose all reason. Everything is gone. So, one sort of hope that's been coming up too recently has been this new company. They've said they're now currently working on a vaccine, but we're getting pushback from that. Like, we can't even have any solid or partial good news. As many are saying that it's completely unrealistic, and they ask how they even got the information of make a vaccine, as no one can officially study these creatures due to some issues with the law. Now, one study, 80% of the respondents said they would not consider taking any sort of medication or a shot that said that it would prevent the illness. They didn't believe it would work. Most don't believe it's spread through actual physical contact anyway, or drug interaction, as most were first reported. Somewhere I read something like 80% believe that people who are bitten is how you get the illness, and that was a high 80%, so something like 89% believed it. And we know that isn't true. There has to be other ways of contracting this illness. It just makes sense. And the information posted online and in some media circles is completely out of control. One station that we were talking to was saying that it was an asteroid from outer space or a radioactive satellite that caused it. I don't know how that would even infect people on our planet, or how that would work. And since people are questioning and saying it doesn't make any sense, now even more people who are looking to use this situation to push their viewers up have led them to claims that it was alien attacks, and that something like they were dropping spores or capsules that turn people into mindless automatons. And I don't even know where to go with that. I don't know where again, it's capitalizing on situations to make sure that they can get more viral viewers is my opinion on it. The more opinion and the more people tuning in with them. And right now, that's just really why are we wasting our energy on a platform that, I guess, if you will, a lot of us are kind of sticking around just because we feel a certain level of responsibility to get the information out. We work on little or no staffs anymore. We have few times to get a lot of the information. We have information machines right now that just simply don't work. We're getting probably about 20% of the information that we need to give it out to you guys. And I don't know how long this market is going to last, just because the structures and the systems that keep us going, it's a question. A lot of people have moved over from specific digital formats over into more analog formats, and it's something that we highly recommend. It's the reason a lot of people are still hearing us now, is because they continue to move over to systems that are continuing to support the transmission of any sort of communication in a way that people can consume it better and get the information they need. But again, we've had a problem since the very beginning of being able to get information, and things are not getting better. They're only getting worse. And that brings me to something that we were just bringing this up before and talking about it before the show too, is I had just received this. It's a written report, and I guess this was made a little bit after the beginning. It's from a Dr. Hobbs. So he is a little bit of information on him, a forensic pathologist that specializes in infectious diseases. I hope I got that right. But his report is eye-opening, to say the least. I don't think many have really thought about this, and he says that PACE is not curable or treatable in the traditional sense, like a disease. He says it needs to be treated like we treat a parasite or a fungal infection, which is an interesting analogy, to say the least. There's a lot of, I'm going to use the word horror movies that I've read up on stuff, and that was actually kind of frightening to think of it as a parasite versus thinking about it as an illness. But that would explain a lot of the idea of how it would be difficult to cure in like they were saying, a traditional sense. They said, in other words, you take an antibiotic and the illness goes away or prevents it, or however you say it, which kind of didn't make sense for fungal, but that's okay. I do get that from the idea that there is different kind of fungal type creatures that I guess do infect certain animals at a smaller size, but it definitely was being used as a reference, not directly. So I guess a little bit like, so think of it as you spray for athlete's foot, you're good. So we'll go from that direction. Anyway, this thing does go on. He says that this illness has been with us since the 60s in different forms, but in reality it is much older and was reported as a national threat way back then. He did say that what he's calling the zombie virus was what it was called back in the day, but he references this as a misnomer. But he said it was more that was taken from the voodoo practices that don't correlate with what's going on at the current one. So he says it's actually worse. So to get into it, the report really doesn't go into details on what the infection is specifically, or how it works, or the system of infection, if you will, but more of a model on how it's going to be spread. And it was kind of dicey. He says it will, in a perfect environment, exponentiate as it goes along. So think of it as like 2 times 2 is 4, then 4 times 4 is 16. That kind of math. That means for each one person that gets bitten, another person spreads it, and now you have 2 who in turn bite 2 people, so on and so forth. I hope you get the concept now. But he then states that this isn't a perfect system because we have, not one person actually runs into other people to continue to spread it. There's points where things stop and go over. So he referenced it more like a pyramid scheme. So you have people that do drop off, but you do have people that continue to move up the ladder. So someone could get into the situation and then not affect other people, but the whole itself is still moving forward. So there's kind of a center mass. So instead of like 4 and 4 is 16, and then 16 and 16, exactly like that, it's more like there's actually about 10 to 12 of these main units that are hitting it. So in a pyramid scheme, you have people who just, think of it as a pyramid scheme, you have people who just aren't going to get recruited. There comes a point of kind of critical mass because there's not enough people to be infected by it. So he described it as survivors versus infected, people who are already potentially can become infected, such as the aged, the infirm, pre-existing conditions like diabetes, heart problems, terminal illnesses. But still, he very much mathed it out here. I wish I could show this to you. And once you get it to like 15 cycles, you've got that critical mass moment where there really isn't any more people to pull into this main system that he has. And I need to point out that if you just do the math, at this point, if you did it by the exponentiation, at 15 cycles, you'd already reached the population of the Earth, which was, like I said, very eye-opening to see that mass kind of grow from its center. So since the illness, it's not like a common cold where people recover, so there's no real timetable. You don't have passing waves like a normal illness. So in a normal illness, you have people that don't affect other people, but then there's a center mass that kind of gets better, and you kind of go in these waves or cycles. And what he's saying is that these cycles don't cycle, they actually stack, which is something that has really ruined the models of all these other scientists. He also points out he doesn't know the timeline or how long these cycles are effectively happening that continue to move up to the next level. So every time you put that math into effect, how's it working? But that makes it even worse because there comes a point when there are survivors, they get choked out of the equation. So they no longer have have the resources available to them to continue, and there's so many infected people that you can't avoid them. And there's a graph here. It explains it like a folding newspaper, kind of at 7 folds. You can't fold anymore, and even if people aren't infected, they put in a position where it just starts happening. So there's going to be a point when the infection is so intense that you end up finding people who are just basically from either contact or from whatever's happening, that they flip sides, if you will, from survivor to infected. And that was what he was most concerned at. So to put it in context, we need to eat and drink. And what happens when there's so many infected that eating and drinking isn't even an option anymore, that you can't go over and get any sort of supplies because the system is now dominant towards the infected versus the people who are actually not infected. And then you start losing what he was referring to as the survivors. So that was kind of not promising, if you will. And the worst part is how quickly this graph escalates. It went from almost 0 to nothing, and we're talking a few weeks, and we're kind of what's called critical mass. So there's no way of undoing it. And it really started making me doing math on, how many National Guard guys we have, how many Army guys we have, how many people do we have, how many people that are willing to react to situations. And I'm just going to say the math on either side did not look well. So, and even the other thing I need to ask is, most scientists are rejecting his input and saying that the infected have at most 3 days of no water, no food. And I do understand that people are saying that they are eating other people. I get that. But even without that, the body cannot last a certain amount of time without food and water. And if the system that they're using is broken, they should not be getting the necessary sustenance that they need. So effectively, let's say 3 to 7 days, that's it for their survival rate. And that's one thing that, like I was saying before, we're seeing a lot of bodies. And that in turn makes me wonder if we are seeing that cycle happen. Are they dying in that cycle? That would make a lot of sense and put people into, that now you're in a better place, right? And they are targeting that as a threshold, which if you use the models, it changes the entire scale immensely. So that means that there are a bunch of people who will be infected. They will die. We will hit a point where there is some sort of critical mass. But there comes a point that in his description that survivors will basically outlast the issue. So one scientist was straightforward with me and said that there will be a great deal of rebuilding after this, that we'll have to meet that threshold, if we will, and then we'll start to see it shrink back because it has to. Maybe it mutates positive or negative one way or the other, but there comes a point when basically this illness has to kill itself. And that when we get to that point, then we can begin to rebuild, and that there would be a great deal of rebuild. But again, we're talking about something that would have a tremendous death toll. Some were putting models at 2 to 5 million people at minimum, and some people are saying that number is considered conservative, that it was going to be a lot more people than that. And I think that's believable. So I believe we can, with what I'm seeing here, even with his worst case scenario, if we put it at most of them live to 5 to 7 days mark, really what we have to do is we have to outlast this. And I think it's easy to outlast because most of us have 3 to 6 months of supplies on our best day. Most people, I do understand, you get food or whatever, 3 or 4 days, but the truth is we can get stuff going here, and National Guard and others are in support of us, so there are shelter systems out there for people. So I understand there might be a distance factor here, but you just use the things that you have available to you. And again, that's something, I see this as positive. I think the goal would be to figure out why we're getting it. People would tell me this isn't promising for many of the shelters that have run out of supplies already. Much of that support structure is dedicated to moving supplies with dedicated trucking systems, and they are working on that right now. So some of the stuff is delayed, but they've made it very clear that they're going to keep doing it. So some truckers have even said they're being basically conscripted in their ranks, similar with military individuals saying that they need to move stuff basically or else. But that says right now that they are given the option to drive in these dangerous areas to move supplies. So those options are available. So maybe we're not moving the supplies that we used to, but supplies are being moved, and they're being moved into areas where people can get them. So if you're not getting them in your house, then shelter options should be available to you if you do the research you need to find out where you need to go. So it's still, again, it still seems like good news to us, because most shelters and bunkers, like you said, you need at most a few months. Basically you're weathering a storm here. So think of it as a huge blizzard. If you've ever been stuck in a blizzard, it's only a matter of time before somebody digs you out, or the storm, the weather changes and the snow melts. And I think that's what we're dealing with here now. Obviously the concerns about continuing to get it is going to be the cleanup question. So for me, let's leave questions of where it came from, which we have no answers there, and we need answers in that arena so that we can better deal with the situation, because when the cleanup starts, we're going to have to be ready for that. And I mean, we haven't been able to get rid of the common cold yet, so how do we know that we won't be in the same situation once this blows over and we have the same problem all over again? And is this something that's going to be stuck with us for good? Maybe this is how this works. And we haven't received definitive information on that. So that the point is to have a point where you can come out, do your stuff, and not have to worry about these things walking around. And that's going to be the goal. So clean up, making sure that we know where that's coming from. I think that's really where we need to address places like the CDC and things like that. And being honest, we have not heard a lot of information, especially from any sort of government agency. There's been no press conferences. It's very, very concerning, especially with, like I said, there seem to be a lot of things amassing outside of our area without any response to those things coming, while the amount of people that I see is becoming a lower and lower number. So take that as you like. But yeah, thankfully we're in a place right now where we have the supplies we need, and that's what we need to keep doing. What is important, if you're currently held up somewhere, to stay where you're in an area that help is on the way. That's the truth. If you're someplace right now and you're log jammed up, things are going to get there. Remember though, if you are bitten or you become sick, you need to report to a shelter immediately. It is now the law, and now it's for the best. It's for your family. It's for everybody around you. But look at the bright side. The majority of the population still has power. We have phone services. And in some cases, I'm even hearing internet. So the things are on. Things are working. They may not always be working the way that we want, but they are functioning right now. So yeah, so like I said, if you're in your area and you're held up, just remember that there is an end to this somewhere. So just, you need to hold out a little bit longer, and that's why we're still broadcasting the way we have. So if you haven't, I understand we're not on the air all the time, so if you have an amateur radio, there are amateur emergency services that update there as well. But I'm just going to warn you, those are pretty spicy, and there's no real fact-checking anymore. There's nobody really telling them what they can and can't say on the airwaves, so to speak. So you may hear some things that are, I'm going to use the word offensive, but that is a resource if you want to use it. So don't think of it like news, but if it's the only thing you have, then it's better than nothing. So there's your thing to stay tuned in. What's this? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Alright, I'm hearing from our producer that there is discussion of shutting down primary radio transmissions, that we are being put on the non-essential workers list and are being told we will soon be told to go home to shelter ourselves and there will be switching to some sort of emergency broadcast system that will basically be the same as news, but is made in a way that they can get the right information to you, and not have the guessing games that we have right now. And it'll be better tuned towards the political information system, okay, or the government information system, however you want to say that. So stay tuned for that. And as I looked outside the station earlier, we have 5 or 6 things in our parking lot, so maybe that will be for the best right now. We will be broadcasting as long as possible, and I'm guessing the social media broadcasters are going to do what they do too. Until then, we're on this non-stop with any information that we have to relay until, basically, I'm going to say until they shut us down. And I know there's a lot of places and channels out there that are having problems staying in operation because we have lost a lot of staff. I'm just going to say that. We're running on skeleton crews. A lot of people have started to leave or flee or been told to stay home. And if they have loved ones or other people, obviously if you have people that you care about, you're going to have to take care of that. So we get it. So So again, we're going to keep doing what we do. I'm sure their system is going to be a little bit more well done, and they're going to call us and put us where we need to. But like you said, it's getting very tiring here from the standpoint of we've been on for a long time here, cycling in and out of each specific people to be speakers on the air and to continue to get your information. But we are really running out of staff to really do that, and I think that at points moving into an emergency broadcast style system may be the play, and I think that might be a good move. But we'll see. It's not happening quite yet. I don't know how long it'll be before that. Obviously, any of those situations have to be set up, and if you guys don't mind, I am going to take a quick break and be right back, because we don't have any more. There's no more sponsors. Nobody sends us bills either, so we can keep running as long as we need to. So I'll be right back. You just stay where you are.
This is a message from Civil Defense Authority. You are currently under quarantine conditions. Do not leave your house for any reason unless you are authorized an essential worker. If you or anyone you know has been bitten or injured by an infected individual, you are to report to your nearest shelter for treatment immediately. Anyone harboring the infected will be prosecuted. These instructions will repeat. This is a message from Civil Defense Authority. You are currently under quarantine conditions. Do not leave your house for any reason unless you are authorized an essential worker. If you or anyone you know has been bitten or injured by an infected individual, you are to report to your nearest shelter for treatment immediately. Anyone harboring the infected will be prosecuted. These instructions will repeat.